The people who work for me, I don't see it as them working for me. I see it as me working for them and really trying to invest, in them and grow the company that way.
We have a great guest today. We have Cody Thompson with us. Welcome, Cody.
Hey, how's it going, Brad?
Very good. So Cody is a luxury home custom builder up in Flagstaff, a little north of me, with T3 Construction. So you're doing some pretty neat things up there north of Phoenix.
Yeah, no, it's pretty funny. A lot of people don't know that we get a lot of snow up here, but just being 2 hours north of you. But yeah, no, we got some cool builds going on.
It is funny you say that because, I grew up in California, which isn't too far away. But when I tell most people in Arizona that we have a ski resort, that there's mountains and pine trees and a lot of snow and lakes, they just kind of stare at you like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, no, a lot of people don't realize it, but we get tons of snow. Not as much as Colorado, but last winter we just got hammered with, 2 foot snows. It was crazy. So yeah, we
Because
definitely get it.
you guys in Flagstaff, what are you, 9,000, 10,000 elevation in some parts? I mean, it's pretty
We're
high, right?
s- yeah, we're 7,000 elevation in town, and then it's up to like 9,000 plus up at the ski resort.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. All right, well, that's amazing. So maybe we start here, Cody. I know it's, you're in one of those markets that, look, all of our markets are affected by labor and material, especially since the pandemic. I think many of us in the industry understand the labor constraints we have. It's even more unique when you're dealing with builders that are building in Sun Valley and Park City. And I mean, Park City's close to Salt Lake, so they have some builders, but you and Flag, what's that like building in, lack of a better word, a smaller market as far as labor exposure to do these amazing homes that you're building?
Yeah, no, and that is one of the challenges of building in a small market, and maybe it's everywhere, but it's super expensive to live here, and so finding quality subcontractors and retaining employees that they want to live here, they want to live in this town. It's expensive to live here, so it's really hard to find those quality trades.
Do you feel that with the cost of living, that's part of the reason that they're driven out and you don't have, exposure to, to a lot of options?
Yeah, I think so. When I was in college, a lot of my friends moved away because they couldn't afford to live here. And so I really do think the cost of living is pretty high. And so, yeah, a lot of people just go elsewhere. And I don't know what the labor is like in Phoenix. I know cost of living is lower. But yeah, people will move elsewhere to find a higher wage. So.
So with, as you mix in weather, how does weather play a role in your builds?
Yeah, no, and as we talked about, we get snow, and so we have to account for that. And we're having to cover metal panels and site protection, snow removal. The house that we were building this winter wasn't too bad, but the last winter we were framing. It's a 6,000 square foot. It's actually 10,000 square foot footprint, and a lot of it was polished concrete. So we had to rip all the metal edges off of our snow shovels, and the guys would frame one wall, and then we'd have to spend the rest of the week shoveling. So we got to factor in snow removal, site protection. The roofers have to pull off. They have to shovel the snow off. So we definitely have to deal with that in the winter.
Now, when you're dealing with scope of work such as snow removal, again, I don't know if you're lump sum cost plus, Cody, if there's kind of a hybrid there you're doing. How does that, play into setting expectations with clients when you're looking at all the different costs that go into building a custom home, especially in your
Mhm.
territory and your demographic? How do you lay out those expectations with them to understand, hey, we're going to budget X, but it could be Y?
Yeah, absolutely. We haven't always done a good job at keeping those costs in there, but we were fixed price. A couple years ago, we switched to cost plus, and even with the cost plus, you need to communicate all of those costs to the homeowner, and so we're factoring in snow removal, line for snow removal, line for site protection. And then, we will communicate with our subs too. We'll say, hey, we need you to shovel the roof. We need you to include that in your scope. And so some of those things will be included within their scope under, roofing per se. And so that's how we kind of capture those costs. But yeah, we have to have kind of a contingency fund, or categorize those,
Well,
specify those out.
yeah, I think the communication is an important point, which I'll come back to. But when you mentioned that some of your subs may carry those costs in their side, how are you working through the challenges like last year, where it's a heavy snow season for you? You know, this year's a little bit more mild. Is it an unlimited fund for them to, where they're performing that they have to shovel? I mean, how are they kind of working through the challenge of estimating what that season will be?
Yeah, sometimes it's tough. I mean, and it kind of, again, it comes back to communication with clients, because, like, when we're building homes, like we're building, we're almost 2 years into this thing, and so costs are way different now than they were at the start. And so that's just a communication with the clients, and they understand that markets fluctuate, weather fluctuates, price increases happen. And so just communicating with the clients, but also with subcontractors, if we have, if we're doing drywall in the summer, they don't have to provide heat, but if they're going to be in the winter, and sometimes we don't really, it just depends where we're at in the build. And like I said, this winter is pretty mild. Last winter, we got hammered, so it just kind of varies. But again, just it all comes down to communicating. We may have a lot of costs, in snow removal to the client. Just being upfront about those.
Yeah, I've found that, we do a lot of cost plus as well. And so when you're cost plus, to your point, you have to communicate more than
Mhm.
lump sum for sure. I mean, especially as, some of these allowances may not be enough or there may be extras there. A lot of clients are trying to understand, okay, where do I have money to move? Because um, the reality is, and this is fairness to all clients, right? It's not as exciting to pay for snow removal as it is to upgrade, their kitchen island possibly. So,
Right.
so
Yep.
there's a little dance we have to perform there. Going back to the cost plus, I was just meeting with a client about this, and we're all cost plus, as you know, which I think is very favorable to a client. At the core of it, a lot of clients may feel that you may not have their best interest if it's cost plus. And however, I think most contractors do, like most contractors are vetting, they're trying to contract their subs, they're trying to lock in pricing. No one wants to have that conversation of things escalating, right? Or missing, huge snow removal, portion of the bid. And so cost plus in a lot of ways does protect the client. How has your clientele been as you've kind of worked through the different, because you were lump sum to cost plus? Have you seen a difference in kind of their response and what they like?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there is that, that kind of thought that cost plus, you don't have the client's best interest, but I find that it does. It brings a little more engagement with the client into the budget, and there's a little bit of a more of a collaboration of, like, yeah, we have a set budget, and we have estimates on everything, but if we need to have conversations about a certain line item, it's like, hey, what can we do to reduce this line item? And then it's those conversations with the client. We just had one where we cut our stone costs in half, by just working with the subcontractor, find creative ways. And so that was a huge win for the client, because it was like, hey, we just cut costs. But if it was a fixed price, they wouldn't see those savings. And so, I think it just brings more communication, more collaboration with the client, which, I love. And I think clients having control of where their money is going, and I think it's beneficial.
Well, the funny thing about cost plus, and I love cost plus, as we mentioned, I mean, I think there's a lot of advantages, especially with the product that you and I are building. It makes a lot of sense for both parties. But anyone that's done lump sum, because I was lump sum previously, before I moved over. And so that transition from a lump sum to cost plus, the paperwork changes tremendously, because now it's documentation and invoices and I tell our clients they can audit us. It's very transparent, how we're doing our billing. How has that been for you organizationally as you think about the systems and, time and commitments, to put together the documentation monthly and yearly and, providing all that access to your clients?
Yeah, I honestly find it's actually a little bit easier. We track all of our costs in Buildertrend, and they're actually rolling out a lot of new financial tools. And I know you're jumping on their system, and so super excited about that. I mean, before we're still trying to figure out their system, but we put together all the costs monthly. We bill our client every single month, and so all of the work in place. Everything we've paid out, we just bill our client, and it's just a monthly cycle. And then we have a conversation every month about, what went up, what went down, are we on target? And we've developed a spreadsheet that we actually pull out of Buildertrend. They can see the live budget on Buildertrend, but we pull that out and give a little bit more detail. And so we just go over that with our clients every month, and works out pretty good.
So walk us through how you're using Buildertrend financially. And I would imagine your customers have an owner portal as well, because you mentioned they have access to the budget. So, how does that work from a communication and just their comfort in knowing kind of where the project lies as far as the cost?
Yeah, I mean, some clients aren't as engaged with Buildertrend as others, but the the information. Our goal is to have all of the information there for them in Buildertrend, so they can see the budget, they can see the schedule, they see the daily logs. There's sometimes we'll assign to dos to clients. If there's certain things we need them information from, we'll assign to dos. A lot of those are linked to the schedule. But yeah, so we put all of that information in there. They can, because it's cost plus, they have access to seeing all of the purchase orders. They can go in and see what our agreement is with our subcontractors. They have access to all of it. So I feel like we're kind of a Buildertrend super user. We use all of their features. And so, yeah, we're really trying to, one of the things that we've been working on with our team is to-dos, and just assigning to-dos to each other, linking them to schedule items. So, but yeah, our clients have access to all of that, and they can see all the info in there.
So we're very similar. I think Buildertrend super user is a good word, right? There's
Yeah.
it's just some love for them because they do so much to help our organization to run the way it does. When you started moving financials there, how was that transition and kind of education to get up and running?
Well, we're still trying to figure out all of their new, because they weren't quite cost plus friendly,
Hmm.
but they are now. So we're still trying to learn all of that. And so what we did, because before it was kind of strictly focused on fixed price, and that's how we would take those numbers, pull them out into a spreadsheet, and just kind of create the information we need, and then send that to the client. But now I think we're going to be able to keep all of it on Buildertrend, and clients can see it live and have all the info on there.
Yeah, it's very similar to us because, for us, Cody, we made this huge move to Buildertrend end of last year. So end of last year, we started migrating everything over. That way our accounting software was compatible. And what a change it's made. I mean, now I'm looking from January on, especially new projects starting this year of 2024. Uh, the way we're able to set it up where the homeowners know exactly what's contracted in that line. So if we have a budget, because probably similar to you, I mean, you have snow removal, right? A good example for me is I have hard digs. So we may have an excavation line that is 100,000, 80,000 is contracted, for the scope of work. And then we may have 10,000 for hard dig, 10,000 for a final grade, right? Touch up grades. So it's easy for the client now to go through and kind of see, fluff, if you will, on what those lines are. We're open and we shut out the client. And then if there's variances, depending on either change orders by the client or variances by us on stuff we're eating, like it's all pretty transparent there. So we found it super beneficial that now I don't have to spend any time with clients calling saying, "Hey, Brad, where are we at on budget? Can we review? Where do we have fluff and which line?" I mean, essentially it's all there and they can just look at it anytime.
Yeah, no, it's super great. They can jump on there, and I actually, um, I, I can't remember the financial system you used to use. I actually went through the training to do that, and it just didn't quite work for us,
Yeah.
and it was a huge investment, time investment. But we eventually stuck with Buildertrend, and yeah, so super glad they're coming out with new tools, and but we're sticking with Buildertrend, and it's working out good for us.
Yeah, it's been great. Now, I know you're really big about, a rising tide raises all ships, collaboration over competition. I mean, that's something a lot of us, through these platforms share a lot. How has your relationship with other builders, either specific to your market or nationally, impacted your business?
Yeah, so that is pretty big for us, and couple of years ago and early on, I tried to reach out to other builders in town, older builders, older, wiser builders, and tried to sit down with them. And some of them they didn't want to sit down. Others I was able to sit down with them, but they didn't really want to share anything. And it was kind of a bummer to me. It's like, yeah, I'm a newer builder. I want to learn, but I also want to just know the competition, and not even necessarily competition, but I just want to know the info out there. And so, I've actually connected with some younger builders here in town, and it's just been fun to kind of get to know the other builders in town. And there's some that I'll call for building science questions, and yeah, really tried to just push that collaboration with other builders here in town.
How has that response been? I mean, it sounds like it's back and forth. Locally, how has it been?
I feel like I really do feel like the tide is rising, and so I really I'm encouraged with the handful of builders that I've been able to talk to. Actually, one of the builders that I used to call for advice on building science, we've actually kind of joined forces. So he's a superintendent now,
He's your
and
superintendent?
yeah, he's our superintendent now. He was building passive homes, and he's super smart. I mean, he's a rock star. And I've been talking to him for years. If I have a building science question, I'd call him up. But then we just kind of got to talking, and I was like, hey, what would it look like if we combined our talents? And so we had been talking for years. And ultimately, he ended up jumping on board, and I got a few of his guys. But that's been huge for us because again, going to that collaboration over competition, it's like we were both kind of struggling, as we all do, to try to find labor, to try to get clients, to try to build these quality homes on our own. And so now I feel like we're able to deliver a higher quality to our client. We're able to build, I could stay in my lane, growing the business. He's on site, managing all the details. Like he's so good at all of that. And so I really feel like we're able to be in our strengths and just deliver a higher quality. So that kind of collaboration kind of really helped our business. Yeah, so that's been key thing for us.
So walk us through how that happens. I mean, you're collaborating with one of your competitors. Now you're working together. He works for you. How did that relationship evolve to what it is now?
Yeah, I mean, it really just started out with me calling him and just asking him questions, and just trying to get to know him, be friends. And we knew each other outside of building as well, and so just trying to get to know each other. And then, like I said, it was over a couple years, because at first it's like, you know do I want to fold my company and go work for him, or does he
Right.
want to fold his company and come work for me? And all of those kind of questions. And it's just kind of like, is it going to work? Is it not going to work? But just kind of over the years developing those relationships, we kind of just decided that might be the best path forward. And it's been, the last couple of years have been great.
That's amazing. So structurally, I mean, was there, without getting too personal, was there ownership involved? Like, how did that transition work where someone had their own company, like, okay, we're going to work together, and partner?
Yeah, no, there's no ownership involved. I do try to give profit sharing and those types of things. So there's definitely a level of ownership, which I try to instill in all of our employees, even our trades guys. It's like I want them to have a sense of ownership within T3. I don't want them to think that, oh, they just work for me. They just work for T3. I want them to have ownership of this company. So, with that, I I've allowed a certain level of ownership, but nothing you know officially or a percentage of the company, nothing like that.
Which is important. I mean, today, to retain talent, to keep them, to hire them, um, it can be really challenging, right? I'm sure you're the same. And, to create a culture and, profit share financial is always part of that. I mean, that's people are going to, they want to do better for their livelihood and families, and cost of living's not getting cheaper anywhere, especially where you're at. Uh, any secrets to like the company culture and atmosphere you've built where you're able to retain the talent you have?
Yeah, no, I mean that's something that I constantly am thinking about. That's another thing. It's like I'm trying to find out where the wages for skilled workers in town. So talking with other builders, what are you paying your guys? So try to understand that, and then trying to pay above that, and then not just paying above it, but trying to uh, rise the quality of our employees, the guys who work for us, trying to give them the tools to increase their skills and their knowledge. So, we have monthly meetings. We talk about building science. We'll go over math stuff. I'm always trying to invest in them and help them grow in their knowledge, and their skills. And as they grow, I always want to continue to pay them more as they grow. So I'm investing in them, and so same thing with all of our positions. I'm really trying to pay top dollar, but also give them the tools to work at a high level.
Yeah, it's really important. It can be really challenging. You used the term you go over math stuff at these meetings. Are these financials, or what did you mean in regard to math?
No, like construction math. So I mean, we'll do math challenges. Trying, because we do a lot of carpentry, and so we'll. I always do like a $50, sometimes $100, prize, and so trying to keep all of our guys sharp, on math questions, building science questions. I'll test them on all kinds of different things. So we're always trying to learn and grow as a company. So.
Maybe there's some context here because you mentioned, the math challenges, why they need to stay sharp. You mentioned that you're reaching out to other competitors to see what kind of wages are. From the sound of it, I'd imagine you're self-performing some of your work because that's where the labor portion becomes really valuable to understand what they're making, as opposed to just maybe like a management GC. So, by is it because of the market you build in that you self-perform? Is it strategy? Is it, what are some of the thoughts behind why you self-perform?
Yeah. So again, I think we self-perform just to manage the quality. I really think that we can deliver a higher level of quality when we self-perform. I've heard you talk about this before, and I think we can still demand a high quality out of our subcontractors. But there's just certain elements to our guys self-performing that we can manage that expectation. And so, one example is, framing. We do all of the framing in house. And so we had a column on the front of this house, and they didn't mortise it correctly, and so we had to patch it in with a little piece of glue. It's a glue lam column, so they had to patch it back in, and the patch just didn't look the way I wanted. The color of the laminations didn't line up perfectly, and that was one of those things where it's like, hey, I want you guys to rip that out, redo it, and let's make it right. It's the front of this beautiful home. Like, yeah, maybe is it going to be not seen when it's all stained and all said and done? Maybe, but we're shooting for a really high level of detail here. So let's rip it out and redo it. And my guys can do that. I can ask my guys to do that. If it was a subcontract, if it's a framing subcontractor, they'd probably look at me like I'm crazy. Like, hey, well, you want me to rip this out? Like we made it look good. Like you're gonna stain it, it's gonna be fine. And so we are trying to communicate that level of quality and expectation to our subcontractors on the front end with our subcontractor agreements. We're trying to really dial in the scope and the level of quality that we want our subcontractors to hit. But I think some of those things we can have our guys step in and do, whereas it would be a little hard to ask a subcontractor to redo some of their work.
Yeah, it can be tough. I mean, that's a really good example you gave because when you're hiring just subcontractors, there's a level of supervision. You can't just leave them on their own for a few reasons. One, I mean, to make sure they're following the design book and specs and everything properly. But number two, the quality side, like if they've already done the work and they're packing up and they're out, it can be really tough to get them back, right? And motivated to do it right.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're self performing, there's some value adds there to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And also like you said, if we're waiting for a subcontractor to come and do a certain task that's critical path, sometimes we can't get them on the schedule, and we can get our guys over there, take care of it, and then we're back on track, or we hit our schedule if we need to. So
Yeah, that's amazing. What you mentioned that from framing, you're self performing the framing aspect. Other portions of work that you're self performing.
yeah, so we do all the carpentry. So we do the framing. We also do all the trim carpentry, even the cabinetry. So we work with a local cabinet maker here in town. He does all of the design and all of the fabrication, and then our guys actually work pretty closely with him on site. And then our guys do all of the site install, and then our guys are also doing all of the built-ins. Um, any of the other carpentry that we've got to do in the home. We also do the tile. Sometimes we're even setting concrete forms. Sometimes our concrete guy's too busy, so it's like, hey, we'll set all the forms. We'll let you know when it's ready, and they like to just come and pour the concrete and leave. We're typically not doing foundations or any excavation. We do have a backhoe, and we're able to, you know, dig a trench here or there, or move material, things like that. But yeah, so it's mostly the carpentry and the finish elements in the home.
It's pretty incredible, though. I mean, even at the skill set to be able to set forms and facilitate that to accelerate the concrete phase of construction.
Yeah, and we don't do it all the time, but again, it's like, hey, if our concrete guy's busy, we'll step in and we'll take care of it. And that to me is the benefit of having a self-performing crew. And we're just able to step in and take care of it, and also manage the quality with it too.
I mean, was this always your background as far as self-performing, learning the trades, as a skilled carpenter?
Yeah, actually, so my background is, working in the trades. So it's funny. I was in college. I was digging a trench for this guy. He was actually no, I was digging a hole for the mailbox. He was flipping a home, and I saw everything he was doing. I was like, man, I see the value. You can make a lot of money flipping homes. I should be the one, doing the work and doing all that. So I actually jumped on with a contractor. They were a home builder, but it was like 2008, so they were doing. It was a little volatile there, so they were
Hmm.
doing a lot of commercial work, and so I jumped on with them, and it was a super unique opportunity. Because the reason I wanted to get into construction was to learn all the trades so I could flip homes for myself, and so I jumped on with them. The contractor himself was an electrician, he had his electrical license, and then he actually worked with two of his other brothers. One of his brother was a plumber. He did trim carpentry. His other brother was a framer, did drywall and roofing, and so I really had a unique opportunity being able to work with each one of them and working through all the different trades. And yeah, so that was kind of my background.
It's incredible. And so walk us through, I mean, it sounds like recession 2008, 9, 10. You know, how has that experience played a role, in your career to this point?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really, I know a lot of builders were kind of hurt during that time, but that's kind of when I jumped in, and we had kind of a cool little thing going on because we were out on the reservation doing commercial jobs. We did the high school in Tuba City. We rebuilt the church out in Chinle. There's a lot of commercial projects that we did, and we just self-performed everything. And so, I learned a lot of different commercial things. Steel framing, a lot of different trades than residential, and so I got all of that experience, and then I came back into Flagstaff, and then I started flipping homes with one of the guys I worked with. We flipped homes, and so I really feel like with the recession, I just had a really unique opportunity being able to self perform and then jump into flipping homes and redoing gutting the whole house. Go in redo everything in the whole house, and then just that was kind of a repetition. Going from house to house to house, just refining those skills. And so, I don't feel like that was when I was working for other people at the time. So, I was learning and growing, and we had really good opportunities.
It's incredible. And do you feel that because of that experience, when you were working for another GC, self-performing, learning the skills yourself, has that had an influence as to why you're self-performing now as a GC?
I think so, yeah. And, I still find it hard to, um, I like to be on site and be swinging the hammer and doing those things. So I personally have to pull myself off the site and do the things that grow the business. And so it's hard because I want to be I want to be the one on site. But yeah, I think does play a part in and that part of my passion is teaching and training guys in those trades and skills, and seeing just our guys become craftsmen and just trying to reproduce that.
So there's always this like tipping point, turning point. You're working for another builder. I would imagine getting a ton of skills. Opportunity sounded like it was fantastic. What flipped the switch for you to say, okay, I think I'm ready to go off on my own?
Yeah. So, after I was flipping homes, we, the funny thing is, we didn't really, I don't think we made a ton of profit. I wasn't involved in, the buying and selling.
Hmm.
I was just involved in the construction phase, but we built those at such a high quality that I think we basically just broke even. So it's just kind of a fun, we were able to just make money doing it. We weren't really able to make a ton of profit, but through that process, I really gained the appreciation for quality and attention to detail, and that's where I kind of shifted my focus to. I really want to be building, custom homes or, remodels at a really high level, and so from there, I started. I was a foreman and then superintendent for another GC here in Flagstaff, and we were just doing a lot of remodels and things like that. And so that was, why I kind of wanted to start my own company, to really be able to focus on that quality and attention to detail. And so, yeah, I jumped out and started my own company.
Well, and this is probably a question for anyone who's listening, entrepreneur. I mean, a lot of people may watch you, Cody, and see these incredible homes you're building. And it's rare, if at all, that anyone jumps off, starts their company, and all of a sudden they're building this, 10,000 square foot house, right? Up in Pine Canyon, up in Flagstaff. How has the company evolved, to get you from, and I'd be curious to know kind of the first projects you started on to what you're doing now. How did that transition happen?
Yeah, it's so funny because it's funny how your goals shift because I really think that like from the day one of my company or even before, it's like I want to be building high end custom homes in Pine Canyon, and here now I'm working on my second one, and my goals are still shifting, and so it's funny how your goals shift. But yeah, starting out, I've always just done like one or two homes a year. We've been in business, we'll be 10 years in August, and so we've just done one, two homes a year. And yeah, starting out, they weren't very big, they weren't super complicated. They were just your standard homes. But I've always, every single home, I've always tried to incorporate cool details. I've tried to add extra things in for our clients, just because I wanted to perform that detail or whatever the case is. So we've thrown a lot of details into our homes, just for fun, and then along the way we've done remodels and additions and things like that. But now our focus truly is just on custom homes.
Did you find it like when you were getting your first one, as you're communicating with the client, did they have any reservations hiring Cody and, T3 construction, as you're kind of, entering this field?
Yeah, no, and I feel kind of blessed in that way because we I had a friend that approached me and said, "Hey, I want to build a home." I didn't have my license at the time, so we actually kind of sat down, and he knew my experience. He knew the level of detail and quality we could hit, and knew that I had experience in construction, but I had never built a home from the ground up. And so there is a lot that goes into building home, developing a budget and managing a schedule and managing subs. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that, aside from just performing the work. And so there was some learning curve there that he was willing to work with me on. And, I feel extremely grateful for him. So he actually helped me get my GC license, and I did almost everything on his home, self-performed it with me and one other guy. That was our first home that we did. And I worked super cheap. I
I
built it
bet.
super cheap for him, so he got a deal, I got experience, and from there I was just able to build my portfolio.
That's incredible. So again, that's the win-win. A lot of people say, "Well, Brad, how do you start?" And there's a few options. Like, you could take the long road and kind of build organically and level up each time. You can, build a spec home, get your name out there, get some experience and stuff. Or, Cody has his accelerated version, right? You call it a loss leader, but essentially you're finding someone to take a risk on you, invest in you. You're going to work your tail off from your side. And they're going to get a home at a steal of a price, I'm sure. It's pretty inexpensive, but with you self-performing so much of it, how was the duration? How did you factor that into the build time?
Well, I mean, we still had subcontractors, so we had, um, and it's always kind of a dance of like, what do our guys do, or what do I do, when our subcontractors are working. So like as they're doing the foundation, I don't even remember at this point, but I know that we were probably building decks and doing all kinds of other stuff while the foundation was getting built, and then we would jump over and then we would start framing the house, and then we'd be doing siding while rough trades is going on, and yeah, so it just always seems it just kind of seemed to work out.
Yeah, that's incredible. How speak about marketing now. Like as you look at your marketing strategies, direction. I know you're pretty active on social media. How has that played a role?
Yeah, social media has been huge. I mean, I I've learned a ton and met lots of really cool people. You included Nick Schiffer. Even just going to IBS, just meeting a lot of different people, and just learning and being able to grow and network has been huge.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that because I found that social media is kind of an interesting platform in the sense that there's definitely um, you can get clients from social media. You can kind of build your platform, but networking. We kind of touched on this earlier in the conversation. Is that I found social media as a really quick connection to meet other builders, to understand different processes, see details they're doing in other markets. I think Nick's a good example for you because he's still performing a lot of work just like you are. How has that been for you collaborating and meeting these people through social media and how responsive have most of them been?
Yeah, it's actually been surprisingly, when I reached out to you the first time, you responded. Nick's, I do some one-on-one calls with Nick. It's actually, you have these accounts with lots of followers, and you think, oh, well, they're never going to talk to me, but it's really been the opposite, and just the camaraderie and people answering questions has just been huge and such a help to me. So.
Yeah, that's great. Speak about how we met. I know you and I have, conversed online and, fortunately we connected in person, extensively for a few days at the Coalition Summit.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny because I was following Nick with NS Builders first, and then I found your account, and I was telling my wife, I was like, man, if these two guys ever do an event, put some type of event on, I have to go to that. And I'm not kidding you. The next week, you guys announced the Contractor Coalition Summit, and I was
That's
like, I was like, babe, I gotta go. I've got to go to that. The first one didn't work out. Then the second, or the one in May in Scottsdale. I mean, just 2 hours from my house. I was like, all right, I've got to make this happen. But then it was our 15-year anniversary on the date, and then you guys ended up switching the date, and so so thankful I was able to go. Yeah, so such a good event.
well, I know you mentioned that there were some, some of the methodologies and theories and principles and stuff you mentioned you had already been applying. Um, how has the company evolved now from what you're doing before to being there networking with other builders and kind of going through, those days of the summit?
Yeah, so it's funny. I mean, I I did learn a ton at the Coalition Summit, but I think the biggest thing I gained was the networking piece, as well as, there was a lot of things I was hesitant to implement in our business, and there was a lot of things I was kind of working on and thinking through. But I think, when we as builders, aren't able to really get good information from others, like I talked about, if we go to builders in our own market, they're kind of unwilling to share, and so it's kind of like, man, is this standard practice? Should I do this? Should I not do this? So going to the Coalition Summit, I mean, I think all my questions were answered. There was so much transparency, and not just learning from you and Nick, and the other presenters, but just talking with the other attendees and just asking them, like, hey, what do you guys do with your contracts? Or it, over that event, I was able to get a lot of questions answered, and then just the confidence to be able to move forward with knowing that, hey, this is a solid plan. I'm going to start implementing these in my business, and so we have implemented a lot of it, and already seen a lot of growth, even within the last year.
I love that you share that because Cody, I look back at my career and what's interesting is, a lot of us have learned to be confident because of failure, because of mistakes, or lack of a better word, being burned on something, right? Whether from a
Yeah.
client or subcontractor. And so you kind of gain, knowledge, wisdom, if you will, through these experiences you have. And what's tough is like when you're in front of a client and you're cornered, for lack of a better word, or from a subcontractor or supplier, and you've never dealt with that situation, it's really hard to know how to respond or what the correct answer solutions should be to get you out of it. And so what I found is that through Builder 20 and networking with other builders such as yourself and the summit, and so many different avenues out there. To your point, you become more educated. You mentioned early on that you're challenging your team in math, right? The reason being is that when they're, I'm sure, building stair stringers, that they really understand how to calculate that, right? And that practice and repetition and understanding brings a lot of confidence in their day to day. And it's no different to us running a business to really understand how to run the business. And you can be a lot more confident when you're standing in front of a client and the risk associated with whatever they're asking.
Yeah, and and like you said, we've made mistakes. We've and some of those, that's just kind of pains of growing a business. And it's good to have those experiences. Why do we hire a designer? So we don't. We're not stalled out on a project waiting for selections, or to have those real life examples. Is really key to be able to walk a client through, like, this is why we do this, or this is why we follow this process. But you also can learn, you can throw those examples in from networking, from the coalition summit. It's like, hey, this builder does this because of X, Y, and Z. And so you're able to gain that knowledge and experience from others, and be able to share that with clients as well. But yeah, I think, like you said, it really does give you that confidence.
How prevalent are interior designers in your market?
Yeah, so we are, I've heard you say you don't take projects without interior designers, and unfortunately, that's probably one thing that we have been burned with in the past. And so, that is something that we are starting to implement. And as we grow, it's like, the value of having interior designers is huge. Or at least having the architect. We actually have a few architects that we work with that they're really heavily involved in the design, as well. And we see that up here in Flagstaff. And there's also there are a few interior designers that I'm trying to reach out to and talk with. But yeah, I mean, it's a big thing.
Yeah, that is good. Because some markets they struggle a little bit with interior design as far as having a client sign off, understand the value of the interior designer. I know here in our market it's pretty common, so it's really not too hard of a sell. I think over my years I've only had a few clients. I don't want to say push back, but not feel a need for design until you kind of walk them through. And one of my favorite examples, and I'm sure similar to you, is that we work with some great interior designers. And so when a client says, well, I can do the design myself, I know what I like, I typically will bring out a book and say, okay, here's this 3-inch binder with all these details. Is this kind of the similar information you'll be providing? And once they see the value, right, and see what they're providing, it kind of changes the conversation to understand why we put the importance we do, on that design process.
Yeah, no, and that's huge. And and again, going back to educating the client of the level of detail that we need to be able to execute. Most homeowners are not willing to put that amount of effort into giving us the information that we need, and so it really does create problems down the road. Or the burden really falls on us, and we have shouldered that sometimes. We'll go into SketchUp and create details and things like that to move the project along. But then the question is, who pays for that? So it's like, we really need to educate clients that design is really an important part of the project.
Are you using other software? I know we're using Bluebeam. You mentioned SketchUp. Other software you're using besides Buildertrend?
That's pretty much it. I mean, we do Buildertrend, we do Bluebeam, and then we do SketchUp. Um, yeah, those are the three big ones that we use.
Yeah, it's always nice to be efficient. So as you mentioned that your company's dealt with growth, especially this last year and a half. What are some of the strategies for growth, especially in your market? I mean, do you have certain goals or aspirations as far as kind of where you're taking the company?
Yeah, and again, it's funny how goals change. It's like, I when I first started, it's like, I don't want to hire too many employees. I just want to stay small. Um, but now, now we have a superintendent, a project coordinator, and, a field crew. So I guess I don't want to say I don't want to grow, because the second I say that, well, I'll probably change my mind and start growing. But um, yeah, I really just want to invest in the team that we have, continue to add to our field crew and our ability to self perform, and just grow internally within our processes.
It sounds like it. I mean, I think for anyone listening, that's probably one of the biggest value. I know, not every business owner is doing this. I know you are, Cody, that many of us, especially in construction, it's so busy day to day that we're focusing in the business, right? And we're dealing with the fires, if you will, that arise every day. And, very seldom are business owners able to focus on the business and spend that time. And I know that's something that you've really pursued and done. So I commend you, because that shows the growth and competency and, accountability and systems and automation, everything you have, as of today.
Yeah, no, and that's huge for me. It's like I don't see, yeah, I mentioned it before, but it's like, the people who work for me, I don't see it as them working for me. I see it as me working for them, and really trying to invest, in them, and grow the company that way.
Well, that's amazing. So upcoming and exciting. What do you have coming up, Cody?
Yeah, so I mean, this home we have in Pine Canyon, we're gonna be delivering it to the client here later this summer. We're getting into finishes, and it's been a long build, so we are super excited to finish that, and be able to show just some of the um, final product.
That's amazing. And what do you do for fun?
Yeah, so I, I have too many hobbies. I have a lot of hobbies, but lately, I've been getting back into dirt biking. I grew up dirt biking, so I have a Honda Sierra 450R, and so we
Hmm.
go to Glamis every year, just riding all the single track up here. Um, and then in the summer, looking forward to coming up, we go to Lake Powell, go water skiing, wakeboarding. We have a houseboat share up there. So yeah, those are kind of the two things that I love doing.
It's funny. It's all these years I've lived here. I've never done a houseboat at Lake Powell, and I've heard it's amazing. I got to get up there one of these years.
You Yeah, you have to. It's one of the best things. It's only a few hours from you, so
Yeah, it's not too far. I mean, everyone here in Phoenix, they go do a houseboat in Lake Powell, and my brother's probably done it 10 times. And it's one of those
yeah,
bucket list items you got to get on and just make it happen.
yeah. There's really nothing like it. I mean, you'll be on a boat for hours and hours, and still, you just can go as far as you want, and just the vastness of that lake. It's just a super fun experience. So.
So, best advice you've been given.
Um, the best advice, I think, is just you know continue um, investing in yourself, just trying to be 1% better every single day. And so that's a big thing that we always try to do in our company. Just every day, every week, just try to be that 1% better.
And what keeps you up at night?
Man, I think I'm a people pleaser, so I really do. I care about my team. Retaining our team, our the ability to self perform. Our team. I really care about them. I care about our subcontractors, our clients. I really want all of them to be happy. And so, I stress it. I stress a ton about that. Like, is everybody happy? Is everybody like fulfilled in what they're doing? And so, always trying to invest in them and make sure everybody's happy.
That's amazing. So, for those listening, Cody, and again, I appreciate. I know you're busy, so thanks for making time today. It's been long overdue to get you on the podcast. So, for those listening, where can they find you?
Yeah, so we're on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Instagram is at T3 Build. LinkedIn, just look us up, T3 Construction.
Okay. Well, Cody, been a pleasure. Look forward to connecting in person again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot, Brad.
If you get value from the show, please support us by giving a 5-star rating and review on whatever platform you listen to. And I also have a favor to ask. We've had some incredible guests that come on and share their wisdom, their knowledge about their business. So if you have friends or family members that could benefit from those episodes, please share it with them, as well as any other business owners that you're networking with that could get value from the podcast or certain episodes. Please share those as well. Again, subscribe, make sure you're following. Any questions that you have, topics. We've had listeners reach out about certain guests that we should have on the show. Again, brad.l@aftconstruction.com. Email me for topics to address, guests that we should have on, and even if you think you'd be a great guest for the show. So again, thank you for all your support, and we'll see you next time.